You wake up already tired. Not physically tired. Mentally tired. Your mind starts moving before your body even gets out of bed. You replay conversations. You worry about situations that have not happened yet. You feel pressure to get everything right. Even small things feel emotionally heavy. Sometimes you cannot explain why your chest feels tight or why relaxing feels almost unnatural. And after a while, you begin asking yourself a painful question: why am I like this? But what if anxiety is not random? What if your mind learned this behavior long before you became an adult? Because for many people, anxiety did not begin with work stress, bills, relationships, or adulthood. Those things may trigger it, but the roots often go much deeper. Anxiety usually begins the moment a child starts feeling emotionally unsafe in the world around them. A child does not need to experience extreme abuse to develop anxiety. Sometimes it comes from constantly hearing yelling in the house. Sometimes it comes from emotionally unavailable parents. Sometimes it comes from criticism, instability, abandonment, bullying, rejection, or growing up in an environment where love felt conditional. A child who constantly feels tension begins adapting to survive it. And children are incredibly adaptive. If a household becomes unpredictable, the child becomes hyper-aware. They start reading moods, reading tones, reading facial expressions. They become careful, quiet, alert. Their nervous system slowly learns one dangerous lesson: I must stay prepared because something bad could happen at any moment. That lesson does not disappear when childhood ends. It follows them into adulthood. This is why many anxious adults become overthinkers. They mentally rehearse every possible outcome because their nervous system learned that preparation equals safety. Some become people pleasers because conflict once felt emotionally dangerous. Others become perfectionists because mistakes were heavily criticized growing up. Some struggle to rest because they learned their value came from performance instead of peace. And eventually, these behaviors become so normal that people mistake survival responses for personality traits. I'm just sensitive. I just think a lot. I'm just independent. I work better under pressure. But beneath those statements is often a nervous system that never truly learned how to feel safe. Children who grow up around emotional unpredictability often become adults addicted to control. They try controlling schedules, relationships, conversations, and outcomes because uncertainty once created emotional pain. Even when life becomes stable later, the body still behaves as if danger is nearby. That is why anxiety can feel confusing. A person may have a safe home now, a loving partner, a stable career. Yet their body still reacts as though something terrible is about to happen. Because anxiety is not always connected to present reality. Sometimes it is connected to old emotional memories the nervous system never fully released. The human body remembers experiences even when the conscious mind tries to move on. That is why someone can panic over rejection, fear abandonment intensely, struggle to trust peace, or feel guilty while resting. Deep down, the nervous system may still believe safety can disappear at any second. And the hardest part is this: many people spend years blaming themselves without realizing they are carrying emotional survival patterns developed long ago. Not weakness. Not failure. Adaptation. The child version of you did whatever it had to do to emotionally survive the environment it was placed in. The problem is that survival mode becomes exhausting when the danger is no longer there, but the nervous system never received the message that life has changed. And that is where healing begins. Not by asking, what is wrong with me? But by asking, what happened to me that taught my mind to live this way? Anxiety does not only live in the mind. It lives in the body. That is why you can feel exhausted even after resting. Why your jaw tightens without noticing. Why your stomach hurts during stress. Why your heart races during small situations that logically should not feel threatening. Anxiety is not just thoughts. It is a nervous system constantly preparing for danger. And the body becomes extremely good at remembering emotional pain. Many people think trauma only refers to catastrophic events. But emotional trauma can also come from repeated emotional experiences that slowly train the body to stay alert all the time. A child who constantly feels criticized may become an adult terrified of disappointing people. A child who never felt emotionally protected may become an adult who struggles to trust others completely. A child who experienced emotional inconsistency may become an adult who panics when relationships suddenly feel distant. The body remembers unpredictability. That is why some people feel anxious even during peaceful moments. Silence feels unfamiliar. Calm feels suspicious. Rest feels uncomfortable. Their nervous system became so used to survival mode that peace itself starts feeling unnatural. And this is where many people become trapped. Because instead of recognizing anxiety as an old survival response, they begin building their entire identity around it. They call themselves broken, weak, too emotional, too damaged, too sensitive. But the truth is far more complicated. Most anxious people are not weak people. They are often highly aware people whose nervous systems became overloaded for too long. Many are deeply empathetic because they spent years learning how to emotionally read rooms in order to protect themselves. Many become high achievers because success once felt tied to emotional approval. Others isolate themselves emotionally because vulnerability once felt unsafe. The adult personality is often built around childhood adaptation. This is why healing requires more than positive thinking. You cannot simply think away years of nervous system conditioning. Healing usually involves slowly teaching the body that the danger is no longer happening right now. And that takes time. For some people, healing starts with therapy. For others, it starts with prayer, journaling, exercise, meditation, healthier boundaries, better sleep, or finally being around emotionally safe people. Sometimes healing begins simply by understanding your patterns for the first time. Awareness changes everything. Because once you recognize that your anxiety may have roots deeper than today's stress, you stop seeing yourself as the enemy. You begin seeing the patterns more clearly. The overthinking. The fear of rejection. The emotional exhaustion. The need to constantly prepare for worst-case scenarios. And suddenly your behaviors start making sense. This does not mean we stay trapped in the past forever. Understanding the source is not about remaining a victim. It is about finally identifying the wound correctly so it can heal properly. A person with a physical injury would never heal by pretending the wound does not exist. Emotional wounds work the same way. Ignoring them often causes them to quietly control behavior for years beneath the surface. And unfortunately, modern life often keeps anxiety alive. Constant comparison through social media. Endless stimulation. Bad sleep. Information overload. Financial pressure. Lack of silence. Lack of nature. Lack of real emotional connection. The nervous system rarely gets time to fully recover. That is why intentional peace becomes important. Not temporary distraction. Real peace. Learning how to slow down. Learning how to breathe properly. Learning how to stop catastrophizing every future outcome. Learning how to sit in silence without fear. Learning that rest is not laziness. Learning that your value is not tied only to productivity. Most importantly, learning that your nervous system can change. Because it can. The brain remains adaptable throughout life. New habits, healthier environments, emotional safety, supportive relationships, spiritual grounding, discipline, and self-awareness can slowly retrain the body away from constant survival mode. Healing is rarely instant. But it is possible. And many people begin changing the moment they stop fighting themselves, and start understanding themselves instead. One of the most painful parts about anxiety is that it rarely stays isolated inside your mind. Eventually, it begins affecting relationships, decisions, confidence, opportunities, and even your ability to enjoy life while it is happening. Many anxious people struggle silently in relationships because anxiety constantly searches for signs of danger. A delayed text message suddenly feels personal. A change in tone feels threatening. Silence feels heavy. Distance feels permanent. And even when someone genuinely cares about them, their mind keeps preparing for abandonment anyway. Not because they want drama. Because somewhere deep inside, their nervous system learned that emotional safety could disappear unexpectedly. This is why anxiety often creates emotional exhaustion. The mind never fully rests. It keeps scanning, watching, preparing, interpreting, overanalyzing. Some people become emotionally attached too quickly because they fear losing connection. Others become emotionally distant because closeness feels dangerous. Some sabotage relationships before the other person can leave first. Others stay in unhealthy situations because instability feels familiar. The patterns may look different from person to person, but underneath them is often the same thing. Fear. Fear of rejection. Fear of abandonment. Fear of failure. Fear of not being enough. Fear of losing control. Fear of being hurt again. And fear changes behavior in quiet ways. Sometimes anxiety disguises itself as perfectionism. A person pushes themselves relentlessly because mistakes once carried emotional consequences. Sometimes anxiety disguises itself as anger because anger feels safer than vulnerability. Sometimes it appears as procrastination because the fear of failure becomes so overwhelming that the brain avoids action entirely. This is why many people feel frustrated with themselves. They know logically that certain fears do not make sense anymore, but the emotional reactions still happen automatically. Their body reacts before their rational mind can calm it down. And over time, this creates another painful layer: shame. People begin criticizing themselves for struggling. They compare themselves to calmer people. They wonder why simple situations feel emotionally harder for them. Some become embarrassed by their anxiety and hide it completely from others while silently battling exhaustion every single day. But healing usually begins the moment self-awareness replaces self-hatred. Because once you understand where these patterns may come from, you stop seeing yourself as weak. You begin recognizing that your nervous system adapted to experiences that shaped how you respond to stress, uncertainty, and emotional discomfort. And from there, change becomes possible. Real healing is often less dramatic than people expect. It usually starts quietly. A person begins setting boundaries. They stop constantly abandoning themselves to keep others comfortable. They begin choosing peaceful environments. They reduce chaos. They stop feeding their mind endless negativity. They start sleeping properly. Walking more. Breathing slower. Spending less time overstimulated. Learning emotional regulation. Allowing themselves to rest without guilt. And slowly, the nervous system begins receiving a new message. You are safe now. Not perfectly safe. Not problem-free. But safer than before. That message matters. Because many anxious people spent years emotionally surviving instead of truly living. Their body became so focused on avoiding pain that they forgot how to fully experience peace, joy, presence, and stillness. Healing is the process of teaching the mind and body that life is no longer the same environment it once was. And healing is not linear. Some days you will feel strong. Other days old fears will return unexpectedly. Certain situations may still trigger old emotional responses. That does not mean you failed. Growth is not becoming emotionless. Growth is responding differently over time. It is learning not to panic every time uncertainty appears. Learning not to catastrophize every silence. Learning not to abandon yourself emotionally. Learning how to calm your body before your thoughts spiral out of control. Most importantly, healing is learning that peace is something you can practice, not something reserved only for other people. And perhaps the most important realization of all is this. Your anxiety may explain many parts of your life. But it does not have to define the rest of it. The past may shape the nervous system. But awareness, discipline, healthier environments, and emotional healing can slowly reshape the future. Many people spend years waiting for life to stop feeling heavy before they begin living. But healing often begins the moment you decide. I want peace more than I want survival mode. And sometimes, that decision changes everything. Thank you for spending this time here. If you're searching for deeper conversations about life, psychology, discipline, emotional intelligence, relationships, human behavior, and the difficult decisions that shape who we become, then you'll feel at home on Unchartered Decision. This channel is not built around empty motivation or surface-level advice. It's built for people who want clarity. People trying to think deeper. Live wiser. Become mentally stronger. And better understand both themselves and the world around them. Here, we explore the hidden patterns behind human behavior, emotional resilience, silence, ambition, self-control, purpose, and the choices that quietly determine the direction of our lives. If that journey speaks to you, subscribe to Unchartered Decision and continue growing with us. Because better awareness creates better decisions. And better decisions create better lives.